Hi again, I'm Christian Wall, Professor of Psychology at Wake Forest University, and this is the second in a series of videos in which we're talking about coping with Corona. How do we adapt in this very stressful time of this coronavirus pandemic? In the first video, we talked about resilience, those people who can bounce back and adapt and thrive through these types of stressful challenges. And we talked about how it's ordinary and that we have a little bit of resilience in all of us and being able to adapt to these types of things. In this video, we're going to talk about specific types of coping. And what I want to talk to you about is really sort of two versions of coping or categories. Problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is the idea that there's some sort of problem causing you to be stressed, and that the way you solve it is by trying to solve the problem itself. Emotion-focused coping is, well, focusing on my emotional reactions to the problem instead of trying to solve the problem itself. We're going to have a series of videos talking specifically about emotion-focused coping strategies after this, but in this video I want to talk really more about this idea of problem-focused coping strategies. Step one is this: find out what the problem is. And this is a little bit more nuanced than you might think. So if I told you that the problem is not the virus, the problem is not even the pandemic, the problem is what the virus pandemic is causing us to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So for example, the virus is not the problem, because if the virus is in a test tube in some lab somewhere, you wouldn't care about it. Okay? So what are the problems that the virus pandemic are causing in our day-to-day lives? That's what we're going to try to look for. For example, one problem is getting sick. One problem is having others around us who may be sick, or loved ones, maybe even loved ones dying. Or what about the potential of getting sick and trying to avoid that? So all these are problems, and they differ in the extent to which we can try to solve them. So for example, if you're worried about the potential for getting sick, there's a whole series of things out there that government officials have talked about and your local health officials have talked about as ways to reduce that risk, right? Washing your hands and covering your face. Those are ways of problem solving, in a sense that reducing risk. Now, you're not going to get rid of it completely, but at least reducing it. Now, what if your problem, however, is your loved one is sick in the hospital and you can't visit them? That's not really a problem you can solve. So those types of problems are going to be ones that will require a different set of coping strategies. Those emotion-focused coping strategies that we'll talk about in subsequent videos. So step one, find out what the problem is. Step two is this solvable or not? If it's solvable, go ahead and try to solve it, or at least try to reduce it. If it's not, you're going to have to do something else. And in fact, researchers found that when people spend a lot of energy trying to solve problems that are not solvable, that can lead to things like learned helplessness, where we feel like we don't have control of the world, where our self-esteem goes down, our idea of self-efficacy goes down, and we want to avoid that. So we'll talk more about the emotion-focused strategies next time. But hopefully this was interesting to you and informative about how to identify the actual problem, solve it if you can, or at least reduce it if you can, but use a different strategy if you can't. Hopefully this was interesting to you and you learned something from it. Again, I'm Christian Wall, and stay well. Thanks.